Welcome to the show. Today I have with me the Superintendent of the Year in Oregon, 2013. Most of you already know who I'm talking about, our own Dr. Maryalice Russell. Thanks so much for being with us here today, Maryalice.
Happy to be here.
You have done so much and done it very quickly. I know you were very busy. I'm just going to say that I happened to run into one of your neighbors, and I was telling her that I was going to have you on the show. And we were just marveling at what you've done. And she said, you know, she leaves between 5 and 6 in the morning. She doesn't get home till 9 or 10 at night. So I think that's one of your secrets is you work very hard. And I really appreciate the time you've taken to
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I was won over by you when I saw a video, it was a cell phone video, that was taken from the stands when you had all the teachers gathered together and you rocked and danced. Was it Don't Stop Believing?
I think it might have been, yes.
That was a beautiful thing, to
Yeah.
see the whole auditorium filled with that kind of energy and you leading
Thank you.
the whole staff that way.
Well, that really wasn't my idea. It was the idea of one of our building principals, but I think it went over really well.
Yeah, I just was thought, well, that is a great way to start the year. And I saw the energy there. It was just very inspiring to me. I wanted to ask, just starting off, you came to this job 2002. You've been here quite a while. Across the board, test standards have gone up while you've been here. What did you bring to the job, and how has that matured over time? Did you have some guiding principles, and what have you learned since you've been here?
Well, first of all, I think any improvements that the district have made really are a result of the collective capacity that I think we have within McMinnville Schools. I think we have just some incredibly talented teachers, some incredibly talented administrators. I can't tell you the number of our support staff that genuinely care about what happens with kids every day. And I think this community is just lucky to have a workforce in their school system such as those people. So, you know, for me, what I can do is just complement that skill set that's already here, and really believe that children come to us ready to learn, want to learn, and if we can provide them the best instruction possible, that's what we're to do. So we work to support our staff and to help them develop those skills, to enhance where they already are and go further, and make sure that every child knows that he or she are the most valuable thing that we have coming through our doors. So that's really important to us.
The Coming to School Ready to Learn, that reminds me of a newspaper article I read. I think it was December of 2013, where you and a number of community leaders were pictured, and you were asked, what's your New Year's wish? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember what you said?
I don't remember
I
what
do.
I said, probably.
I do, because it struck me, and it was along the lines of, I wish for kids coming to school that are well-loved, well-fed, and ready to learn.
It's true.
And I think if you were wishing that, then some things might need to change for that to be true across the boards. Have you seen progress in that, helping kids, and what is being done to address that in our school system? Kids coming to school being ready to learn.
One of the things that we're working on this year, and in, of course, previous years, is we're trying to bridge that gap between children who are not having preschool experiences to help them have preschool experiences in McMinnville schools, and to support existing preschool efforts that are happening around the community. We also participated and have helped form the Yamhill Early Learning Hub, and we've received some grant dollars from the state to promote early education for children birth, believe it or not, up till readiness for kindergarten, when they can come in the doors at 5. So in the last few years, we've opened 4 sections of preschool targeted towards 4-year-olds. And we are also doing summer activities. So children, before they come to kindergarten, come to a kindergarten readiness camp to help them be ready to start school. We also have staff that are working with our own teachers, working with the Yamhill Early Learning Hub, and they are doing a series of presentations around the community to other preschool daycare providers of the kinds of things and the kinds of activities that can help children be successful in school. We have a Jump Start for Kindergarten, or a Ready for Kindergarten program that we offer 3 evenings over the course of the year. It's open to any family member who has a child coming into kindergarten, even if they've had children in our system before. And there we provide dinner and daycare for the kids, but we're providing an opportunity for the parents to learn what things they can do in the home to help their child succeed in school. And so each parent leaves each session with a kit of literacy activities, math and reading literacy activities that they can do with a 1-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. And the sessions are provided to parents based upon the age of their children. And we think that's really doing a lot to help elevate the readiness for learning in our community. In addition to that, there's all kinds of other agencies. They're doing lots of things to help children at young ages come to school ready to learn.
So just in that brief description, you named 4 or 5 programs. Yeah. There's a lot of energy behind this very subject. Are you seeing a change? Are you seeing results?
You know, we are seeing a change through different components. So anecdotally, teachers will say to us, a student who had preschool comes to school with a different set of skills than a student who has not had preschool. Mm-hmm. So that student might know how to work in groups, might be able to walk in lines from one part of the building to another, have some of those self-regulation or behavior skills in place that perhaps a child who hasn't been around a lot of other children doesn't. And so that takes time for the teacher to teach those skills so the young student who hasn't had that experience can quickly become part of the regular routines of the class. Mm-hmm. We have dabbled with full-day kindergarten programs when we've had sufficient funds to provide it, and our teachers will tell you those students who had full-day kindergarten versus those who didn't are much further ahead academically. And then coming up this year, we will have full-day kindergarten for all of our students, and we're looking forward to seeing huge results from that experience for our kids.
Okay, well, full-day kindergarten brings up, that costs money.
It does.
And we have a budget that's been proposed by the legislature. At this point, it sits around
7.36 today.
Thank you.
Yes.
$billion, hopefully, and rising. Last biennium's budget was around $6.55 billion.
Right.
So there's substantially more, and yet it's not enough.
Right.
I got a tweet from you. I now follow you on
yes.
Twitter that
yes.
said the current amounts will fund children less by $58 per
right.
student at the current level.
Right.
Why is it not enough?
Well, you know, as the legislature has allocated more money, as you've said already, they've also asked us to do more program, provide more program. Mm-hmm. And so we are doubling the amount of teachers we hire to offer kindergarten, because right now we only hire a half-day teacher for every kindergarten section we teach. Next year we'll be hiring a full-day teacher for every kindergarten we teach, in essence doubling the cost to provide a kindergarten program. And the state, in their appropriation, has not allocated sufficient money to pay for, in combination, that doubling of your kindergarten cost mm-hmm. plus district roll-up costs. And district roll-up costs include things like employee increases that occur from year to year, and other costs that many of your viewers would be familiar with in their own homes, like rising fuel costs, energy costs, mm-hmm. If the textbook prices go up. And so roughly we're at needed about 4% increase just for status quo programs, let alone adding the full-day kindergarten. So no, the current appropriation is insufficient, and we're really advocating to get the legislation to at least $7.5 billion for this biennium.
Just to hold that 4% increase?
Hold 4% plus full-day K.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm pulling for that to happen too.
Great.
While we're talking budget, you have a local budget you're developing now. I think you told me $98 million locally. Did you want to talk about that process at all?
Well, we do have about $98 million in total funds that we look at next year and base our budget on that amount and the staffing and so on. We have about 700 employees in the district, and mm-hmm. so a lot of that goes towards paying salaries and benefits for our employees, and then of course the things that go along with materials and supplies that kids need in the classroom, as well as facilities, maintenance, and so on. So it's a large budget. It contributes a lot to our local economy in terms of our staff who receive their wages from us and spend them in the community. Our budget process, however, if one were to attend a budget meeting, they'd learn that to offer status quo programs next year plus full-day K, we'll need to use reserves, again, because of insufficient funding from the state. So savings in order to run the same program next year as opposed to make cuts. So we're about $3 million short of where we would like to be across the biennium relative to the funds we're receiving from the state. And we're looking, rather than cutting programs, we're looking at offsetting that $3 million by using reserves moving forward. Okay, but that $7.5 billion state budget would almost negate that. We still have a little bit, but it wouldn't be to that degree. Right. So I think it's really important that we keep a healthy reserve. Our operating costs are about $4 million a month, and it's really important that we be very cautious in how we use reserves and be planful that there can be downturns in the economy, as we recently learned or experienced together as recent as 2008, and it's been a really slow climb back for the state to generate some positive revenue. Yeah. I'd like to jump to a topic that people have been talking about a lot. There's this pair, at least, or trio of concerns people have around Common Core, Smarter Balance testing, and the curriculum. Mm-hmm. So let's just start at the top. Common Core, a standard that was developed nationally, mm-hmm. adopted by Oregon 5 years ago.
You've been thinking about it for 5 years. How are we going to meet these standards? Do you want to talk a little bit about how you've been able to prepare for that?
Well, there have always been standards.
Okay.
You know, in schools, teachers have always taught students according to a set of standards. Before we had Oregon standards, so the Oregon Assessment of Knowledge and Skills was the OAKS test that measured the Oregon state standards, and now we simply have a different set of standards that are consistent with other states. The benefit to having students assessed on standards against other states is it really allows you to take a look at your program to determine if the kids coming out of McMinnville or the students coming out of Oregon, are they on par with the students anywhere else in the country? And of course that's important because we want our children coming out of Oregon and coming out of McMinnville to be as competitive on any front, certainly nationally and preferably globally, so that they're going to have a great future ahead of them, be able to earn those living family wages and provide for their children, and kind of break this cycle of poverty that we see Oregon growing into so much without having adequate job sources for our kids. So there's nothing wrong with high standards, and I think when we talk to folks and we give them sample math problems, would you prefer your child know this versus your child know this? I think most people would prefer their child have the higher skill set. I think it is this smarter balanced assessment that has concerned folks because coupled with higher standards, it's a more complex assessment. So before where children had to answer a multiple choice test, you know, answer A, B, or C, where the answer's provided for you, in many cases on the new assessment, students have to not only describe their answer, but explain how they got their answer, and that any test question could have 2 or 3 parts to it. So before, when it was one question, one answer, it might be one questions with sub-questions and multiple answers. So of course the assessment, you know, is going to be more difficult. And we've always assessed students. So we've had OAKS assessments, we've had always had standardized assessment. I think the issue isn't really, in my perspective, teaching students to high standards or trying to adequately assess how students do it. It's the level of importance we put on the assessments themselves, that they're utilized to either rate a school or rate a child or determine if a system is failing or achieving, when in reality what we want is for children to learn, for children to benefit from their learning, and we need periodically to do assessments so we can say, here's how we, as adult educators, can change our practice, improve our program to help the students be more successful with any standard, with any measurement that may be used to assess their progress. So in this world of accountability, I think sometimes states and federal governments misuse these accountability notions when really what we want ultimately is just help students be effective citizens when they leave our system, and by doing that teaching them to the best of our skills, the best of our ability to do so.
Okay, interesting. So it's the smarter balance testing plan is not too hard, it's not too extreme, but rather the difficulty comes when too much importance is placed on it.
Well, too much importance is placed on it, or if we were ineffective in providing students the skill set to be successful on the assessment. And I think this first year will give all schools a baseline to say, okay, given what we knew, what we understood the standards to be, here's where our students are. And it's not about how the students did, it's really about how can we improve what we're doing moving forward. So I think that's part of the problem associated with this notion or concept that people have about the assessments.
Okay. If we put the standards here and the testing here, in the middle I would put curriculum. This is how we prepare the students to take these tests to meet these standards. The curriculum, is that local? Is that handed to us by the federal government? Is it handed to you by the state of Oregon? How is it developed?
Think about at the state level or at the national level, teams come together and policy is written, and there's this determination that X standards will be met. And that has been, certainly as long as I've been in education, which has been a pretty long time, it has always been up to us how to do the how, and that how being what instructional strategies we're going to use in the classroom, what textbooks we're going to use, what online digital materials or resources we're going to use, and how we're going to develop the curriculum to help the students achieve the standards. The state does provide an approved adoption process where they encourage and require, unless you have a waiver, districts go about a process of reviewing their materials in every subject area on a 7-year cycle. We have not missed one of those 7-year cycles yet during my time in the district, and we assess the materials, and if we like what we're using, we submit a waiver and say we're going to stick with what we have. If we feel that something more recently developed is a better resource for teachers and students to have, then we'll purchase that during that 7th year curriculum adoption cycle. So we at the local level determine how we're going to approach the instructional components within the classroom, what materials we're going to use to help students be successful, and how we help them achieve those standards moving forward.
Okay, so regardless of the fact that it's a federal standard, that 17 states have adopted the Smarter Balance testing, that has not affected our local ability to choose what the curriculum is, how we teach the kids?
No, has not affected that.
Okay.
It has affected, if we were teaching this standard, what talents and skills do we need to bring to the front of the line or the classroom to teach to these standards?
Yeah.
That's the challenge we face, and those are the things that our teachers work on a daily basis.
Okay, all right, well that's good to hear. Here's another subject I know that has been on your mind for the last probably many years, is the facilities. How are they going to evolve? How are they going to develop? What's on the table now? What's happening?
Well, you know, if folks drive around and they think about the buildings, they look really great from the outside. We have a terrific custodial, maintenance team, and grounds crew, and we really prioritize caring for our buildings. But some of our buildings are more than 100 years old. And with age, there's going to be natural deterioration of things that maybe you don't see from the outside, or you don't see when you walk into a shiny gym floor, like the steam pipes that are underneath the building and how they corrode over time, like the boiler system we have at one of our schools that is sort of being held together right now by a paper clip and a safety pin, if you can believe it. And those things providing, you know, the air conditioning or the heating in those buildings, they just age out, and yet they're really expensive things to fix. So we're looking at what kinds of help we might need to the community, and we formed a long-range facilities task force made up of a number of citizens from our community. We completed an assessment by outside firm assessing the state of all of our buildings, and to look at those large ticket items that we can't afford on an annual year-to-year operation budget, and into including in a possible bond in the future. But likewise, in 2006, when our great community approved a bond that allowed us to build an addition to the high school, we identified a three-phase rebuild of the high school, and we completed phase one of those 3 phases. So we've been assessing and hopefully bring forward to the community an option to discuss the needs of the high school again. Do we build the second phase now, which would be what we're on schedule and target to do, which is that middle core of the existing high school? Or should we consider building a replacement high school at our property we own out on Hill Road? And the reason we're having that discussion, and have been having that discussion with the community this past several months, is because we realize that the cost, the dollars we'll be spending to complete a 3-phase rebuild, is as much as or slightly more than to build a brand new replacement high school campus at Hill Road. So we thought, before we move forward with saying it's this way or it's that way, let's have the community weigh in. And we've had a town hall, we've conducted a survey of 400 members in our community telephone survey. We'll have continued discussions with the community over the next, the summer months, and then really try to present a package to the community that we hope they'll support about a year from now in May. So we'll be talking a lot about facilities over the next 6 months ahead of us, and we hope people will weigh in and ask us questions if they have them. So a number of challenges facing the district in terms of facilities, and we need to make sure that we protect the investment that our citizens have already made in the facilities that we do have, and make sure we keep our facilities as clean and effective and aesthetically pleasing for learning as we can to support our kids in our community.
Thank you. I'd like to just jump to, just personally a little bit. You've been inspired in your career by your mother. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, that'll make me cry. I'll try not to do that part.
Okay.
But my mother passed away several years ago from bone cancer. And so it strikes an emotional chord with me very often when I speak of her. But I will say she was the single most important influence in my life moving forward. She valued children. She felt that we're here to make a difference, and that people who have resources and means and ability to do so need to help those that don't, that haven't experienced that opportunity yet, find a way to achieve that opportunity. So I think highly of her.
I'm going to translate that a little bit to say that she told you, because you have a great ability, you have a great responsibility.
Yes, she did.
And that sank into you very deeply.
You have done your
Maryalice?
homework, haven't you?
Well, I'm just
yes,
seeing
it has.
that.
Yes, it has
And that's
resonated
what gets,
for me.
That's what gets you up in the morning and
Yes.
keeps you out till late at night.
Yes, it is.
You've made a difference here in that we, like I said, test scores have been rising over the time that you've been here. And we've also faced a challenge here in our community, and not one that is apparent from just driving around and looking, like you said, at the schools. They look good, but driving around and looking, you may not know that 60% of our students come from what's
Poverty.
the term? Poverty. It's a very simple term.
Right.
That 15% of the students don't speak English well enough to be qualified as English speakers.
Right.
How have you addressed these challenges? How have you done this increase in the face of these challenges?
Well, you know, if you take a look at a lot of research studies, and educators always like to quote the research, what you'll find is the single most important predictor of school success is your economic background. So children of poverty have a higher failure rate, lower success rate than children who come from higher income level families. But if you think about it really, what that's about is children of poverty just don't have the kinds of experiences or resources that children are able to have from homes that are more economically well off. So kids don't often get to travel with their parents, go see things. Sometimes parents are in 2 jobs or 3 jobs just to pay the bills, and so they don't have time to sit home at night and read, or to take their child out for a walk and ask, you know, point out a bird and name that bird, and have time for language to be exchanged between them in the household. But I find that poverty isn't a measure in any way of how much somebody cares about their child, or how many hopes or dreams they might have for them, or what success that they wish their child would have upon growing up in adulthood. And you know, poverty really isn't an indicator or a cause of one's ability to learn or not. It's experience, it's opportunity, it's having great teaching and instruction in front of you. So we don't take the stand that because you're from poverty you can't learn. In fact, you can learn as well as anybody else. And how can we offset those deficits that children don't get in terms of experience at their home because of poverty within the school systems that we provide, or extended day programs or extended year programs. So it really is a belief system that everyone can learn. It's a matter and a challenge for us to figure out how to help those students learn who may come from homes of poverty, and in addition to that, to give them these experiences that they might not otherwise have because of the economy of their life. But every parent loves their child, and every parent wants them to succeed, and we want to do our part in making sure that occurs. So we're very committed to that.
That's incredible. I see that commitment as a large part of what's making a difference here, and you've been able to inspire, bring out that commitment. I've seen interviews of people that work for you saying that Maryalice, Dr. Russell is constantly pulling and pushing us to achieve the best that we can. We're doing well, but it's not good enough, and you are the constant motivator. I read a quote by you why you're an AASA member. AASA?
Association of American School Administrators. Yeah.
Okay. It provides a loud and compelling voice to protect what you hold to be important: access and opportunity to a quality education for every child. Now, when you say protect, that means there's forces that would work against that. What are we talking about? What do you see as a concern that reduces that opportunity for a quality education for every child?
Well, you know, people always say it shouldn't be about the money, and it shouldn't be about the money. The most quality exchanges that happen are those between a teacher and a student in the classroom. That's something we want to maintain. But unfortunately, education costs money. It costs money to keep the school doors open, to have lower class sizes compared to higher class size, and the benefit of a lower class size is more one-to-one and individualized attention and exchange between the teacher and the student. And unfortunately, in our country, both at the federal level and at the state level, there has been a shrinking allocation of funds going to our public school systems. And as we shrink those systems down, as we shrink the funding that's necessary to help provide the ratios of teachers to students that we think and value and believe should be, and all the other associated programs, I think that we're at risk of losing this great entity that we think of, or I think of, as public education. And education is the great equalizer for all of us. If we have an opportunity to learn, if we have an opportunity to achieve, the sky's the limit for any individual. And I can't imagine why we wouldn't want that or see that as valuable in any community or any state that we're in. So you need voices. You need voices at the state level, at the national level, to remind our legislators, who have incredibly important jobs and have tons of things pulling at them to fund or support, that if we're not providing for our children first, we're really not providing for our future at all. So I'm a big advocate in saying this is important, and we need to find ways to prioritize it and make sure that every child receives what he or she should get. And we do that by making sure there are strong public schools across the country.
I see what you mean by protect. As you were talking about funding, I did some homework and found that a decade ago, average spending in the state for
You see, you got that one little loose tear that was just hanging there from before,
okay.
so we took care of that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, this might bring another tear because a decade ago, our average spending on per student was in the low $4,000 per student, and now we're in the low $3,000 per student. How are we going forward? What's been cut? I mean, we hear that music and art are the first to go, and yet I see that in the Pathways program in the high school, you've addressed a lot of these shortcomings. But let me go back to my first question. Where did that quarter of funding, how did that affect the quality of education?
Well, you know, if I can speak to McMinnville specifically, I mean, once upon a time I would have told you I had about 750 employees, but earlier I told you I had 700 employees. So over time we've had to reduce our total workforce in order to curtail our expenditures. And so when you have less funding, it goes out in terms of, in general, people resources that you can provide to children. So, you know, I think that's a huge impact. A lot of times people don't see that. And as I've said in other settings, our doors will always open. And our doors will open if we have 40 students in a class or if we have 20 students in a class.
Yeah.
But what we think is we can provide a much better experience for kids if we have 20 teachers in a class than 40. So a lot of folks who poo-poo the fact that we need funds, oh, you educators, you say that all the time, and we do.
Yes.
You know, I'll certainly agree with that. But it's really about that quality experience we're trying to provide our children.
Okay, so basically it's gone student-teacher ratio.
In many districts. Well, in some cases, other districts have reduced days. So they've had, say, 10 fewer school days for children, or 5. We've been able to, in every year since the Great Recession, maintain a full school year for students except for 1 year. And on 1 year, we just lost 1 day. Other than that, we've been able to do that. But it's through cooperative relationships with our employee groups who have agreed to concessions and things of that nature so that we could keep a larger workforce as opposed to fewer days for kids.
Okay, and reduce salaries.
Right.
Is what I'm hearing.
Right.
Let's go to something positive.
Yeah.
The Pathways, the Career Pathways program at the high school. I watched the video that if somebody types in Career Pathways McMinnville High School, they will see an incredible video about all the hands-on opportunities in broadcasting, visual communications, they call it, culinary arts. Tell us about the catering service.
A few years ago, we really wanted to look at some of the stuff that came out in some national studies about relationships, rigor, and relevancy for secondary age students in terms of their schooling experience. And so we went about redesigning the high school to make sure that we were touching on those 3 components. And so relationships, of course, are about the adult-to-student relationships, student-to-student relationships, and how we can foster those as positive so that students want to be at the high school and feel that their teachers really do care about them.
That was the theme that came out of this, was I want to be here because of these
That's right.
These programs.
That's right.
We just have a few more seconds. Dr. Russell, I'm sorry, but marketing, construction, emergency services, visual arts, these are these pathways.
The key to those pathways is making the education relevant for students so that they understand that if they're interested in a particular career field, as represented by pathways you just named off and others, that this is where math fits in, this is where reading fits in, this is where language fits in. And so there's a relationship to their career interest, to this pathway that ties the content knowledge you need to know in order to be successful in that career field.
So the kids know why they're there, what
That's
they're
right.
learning makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Time's up.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for being with us. Local Matters with Ken Moore. And I hope to have Maryalice come back and we'll talk more.